Welcome to RotoWire Fantasy Football Live, coming at you 5 days a week, 11 a.m. Eastern. If you missed the show, no worries. You can always catch the replay on RotoWire YouTube. Today, we'll have Brandon Kravitz coming in at the bottom of the hour to go over some waiver wire recommendations. As usual, we'll go over Monday night game. We'll go over some risers and fallers. We'll be talking about those, getting you ready for the fantasy football playoffs. Remember, we are off Wednesday and Thursday, so this is kind of the weekend. My Friday show, your Tuesday show, be back on Friday with Adam Thompson for the gambling show, Saturday DFS and gambling with John Ryan, then Sunday the start sit stream, which has been very popular, and fortunately people have been showing up to that. Appreciate it. All right, so let's get going with the Monday night football game. Uncle Ted, all right, welcome. All right, the Jaguars, they lose this one. They lose Trevor Lawrence for a few weeks. It's not a season-ending injury. I just heard this report drop in the last 20 minutes. There could be certainly more confirmation as we go. It's a multi-week ankle injury. So, but assuming maybe not, they hang on for a playoff spot, which that's dicey now. They're only a game up on the Texans and the Colts. And there's a lot of teams right behind them in the playoff chase. So this injury could be very, very problematic. CJ Beathard will take over. I mean, he completed 9 of 10 against a bad Cincy defense, but obviously this offense has had some limitations. Now, maybe we've seen Travis Etienne's workload go down in the 60% range for about a month or a little longer now. The line block has been very poor at run blocking, but maybe one of the solutions is they go back to Etienne being an 80% plus player. My narrative, because at some point you can't really go in with good faith putting this offense on the shoulders of CJ Beathard. It worked for the Bengals with Jake Browning, more on that later. But I do think, CJ Beathard, like I said, he's a good stopgap. He's a career backup. He'll have a decent game here. If a matchup is good, he has weapons. Now, Christian Kirk also suffered a hamstring injury, I believe. I don't think they completely specified that, but nonetheless, he went out in the first play of the game after one catch. And with him going out that quickly, I mean, realistically, he's got to likely be gone for multiple weeks. So that's another problem in the offense. Evan Ingram should see his expanded role. The team is really going to have to lean on Calvin Ridley now, and they're really going to have to, they can't fool around anymore with this, static route. They have to do it, some of these successful things they were doing in parts of the last 3 games. So that all said, they're in trouble right now. They're in trouble because that offensive line is not good. Their left tackle is out for a while, and this is a bad situation for them. So now Parker Washington was a nice surprise. Obviously, nobody started him in fantasy. Good morning, Charlene. Welcome back. Parker Washington catches all 6 targets, 61 yards and a touchdown. 6th-round draft pick for them. He was slotted in the preseason to be their number 4. He wasn't. Tim Jones and Jamel Agnew were ahead of him, but Parker Washington was active, and he had missed time. I shouldn't even say he got beat up because he was injured. He was on IR for a while, so there's that. But he looked functional, but that was with Trevor Lawrence. And so now we're going to go to CJ Beathard. So again, as to what we'll get out of Parker Washington, that definitely takes a bit of a hit because he would have been a sweet waiver wire pickup, I think, if Lawrence was around. But again, I think this offense has to really, really condense now that Trevor Lawrence is out multiple weeks, and they are going to be desperate. And their defense, they're week to week. They are not a great defense. They have good weeks, but they don't come out with a consistent effort week upon week. So there's that. So anyway, right now, my guess is ETN is more heavily used. Snap share goes way up. They have to ride him. Evan Ingram had a great game, but this was an easy matchup. And by the way, those that listened to the show yesterday, we don't hit these every week. You understand it. But my props in the last 3 weeks, as I kind of said, I'm going me first, number second. I really went into this, and I have been over 70% the last 3 weeks. It's been off the charts. So last night I gave you 3. I gave you Evan Ingram over the receiving yards. He had 82, blew that away. I gave you Jamar Chase over 5.5 receptions. He had, I believe, 5 or 6 in the first quarter. That was in the third one. I'm trying to think what the third one I gave you was, but that one as well, on the top of my head. Well, the other bet was the Jaguars over 23 points. And then I'm trying to, again, there was a third bet. Now I don't know why I can't remember, but I played that on Prize Picks and went 5X on that one. Again, we don't win every week, but I definitely been doing really, really well. Anthony was hoping for a second Ingram touchdown. Yep. Would have been very, very nice. So Bengal side of the ball. Wow. I mean, I could really struggle to think that somebody saw this coming from Jake Browning. Very impressive game. And again, you hear me talk all year if you've been with me, the subliminal switch. And sometimes when the team doesn't fear the opponent, you don't show up. The Jaguars have been a good defense. Pass defense has been very good. They've been very good all year. But maybe they came in thinking, oh, we got Jake Browning here. And maybe they didn't take Jamar Chase as seriously. What we saw last week against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh was a tough draw. There were 2 tipped passes that Chase caught that were weird plays, and he turned both of those into chunk yardage. So he got like 80 yards, but it was like 4 catches, and it was a bunch of short stuff. And so they had to think, no problem, right? So, but again, Jamar Chase does what Jamar Chase does. In one play, he gets behind the defense. Browning launches up and hits him perfectly. 149 yards and a touchdown. And early on, it looked like it was going to be a short game. But, man, Browning got some confidence. Completed 32 of 37 passes. That was crazy. T. Higgins, a minor factor. Less than Tyler Boyd. 3 for 36 for Higgins. 3 targets, caught them all, but Boyd got 7 targets, slightly more production, a couple more yards, a couple more catches. But that was really it. And Tanner Hudson, of course, got his usual 4 or so receptions. He's been like a low but functional floor PPR. He gets you 4 or 5 catches, gets you 30 to 50 yards. So obviously, if you've been using him in a tight end premium league for that reason, it works. Joe Mixon had the game. Joe Mixon, again, the great compiler on the ground, 19 for 68. Not, that's certainly not, but he gets 2 rushing touchdowns. And, that was the third prop. The third prop was Mixon as a receiver. It was over like 19 and a half yards. I think it went up to 21 at one point. He had on his first catch, I think it was 24 yards. He was over that on 1 catch, and he ends up with 49 receiving yards. But again, we pointed out that Jacksonville can't cover receiving backs. Mixon regularly sees targets. I think the surprise, and this was buzzed in the news early in the week, it said Chase Brown would be a thing. Chase Brown, 9 for 61. Change of pace runner, and we talk about it. The defense plays at the speed of the starter, and then the change of pace comes in. Again, we talked about, Elliott last year as the hammer and Pollard as the changeup, and the changeup crushed. Well, that was the case. Chase Brown looked great, 9 for 61. I liked him preseason, but clearly he didn't earn the role, and then he got hurt. But anyway, it looks like his role may be sticky going forward. It looks like it was an organizational decision, and I think they're going to keep going in a change of pace role with Chase Brown. So I think there's flex value there, depending how deep you're. If you're a 10-team league, no. But if you're a 12-team league, yeah, if he's going to get 9 touches, yes. Chase Brown offers him. He didn't see any targets. Good receiver coming out of Illinois. But Joe Mixon saw the lion's share. And Mixon's been a good receiver. So there's that. Now, Mixon's always been a problem in pass pro, but I don't know that Chase Brown is at that stage where he's going to be able to, do much better. Samaje Perine last year was really fine in that role, which took away some of Mixon's receiving work. But Mixon's always been a decent receiver. So the Bengals are still alive. I mean, we'll see if Jake Browning can repeat this. But I pointed out yesterday, Jake Browning, he played as the starter in the preseason when Joe Burrow dealt with the calf. So if nothing else, he had that opportunity to get some chemistry with his players and an understanding of the offense. So I thought that could help a little bit. Charlene stashing Zach Ertz. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, definitely where there's roster space. Just remember, Zach Ertz can't run anymore. Last year, he was 5th, like number 5 percentile yards after catch. Great receiver, but he can't run. And this year we saw the same thing. It was like they were forcing him all these targets. And then it's like, oh my gosh, he can't, he's coming off and then he couldn't run, and then he's coming off an ACL. And it was like fast return from an ACL. So, if you're going to get him, I just don't, we're not getting the Zach Ertz of 4 years ago or 3 years ago. We're getting the Zach Ertz who might get you 4 catches for 18 yards. I think maybe in the right spot, he could be a red zone weapon, depending where he lands. If they don't have other red zone weapons. But Trey McBride just, he pushed Ertz out of the way. So there was that, right? Eric, you lost Trevor Lawrence, Minshew or Browning. I haven't looked at the schedule this week yet. Let me, if you want to post down who they're playing, and I can give you early word on that. But at this point, I don't. It's Tuesday morning. I'm not even close to look ahead mode, but post the opponents for me. And I can help you with that. Jonathan Gonzalez, last week you traded Stafford and Nico. The other guy needed a quarterback. Perfect. Always deal those quarterbacks and you have a second one, especially in a one quarterback league. All right. If you're enjoying the show, please consider hitting the like and subscribe button. Please consider giving me a follow on the X at Jim Coventry NFL. Let's go over players who are gonna on the rise, maybe help you in the fantasy playoffs, or you're getting set there. Okay. So Eric, also tell me who's at home and who's on the road in that game. All right, quarterbacks. Look, if you're in a super flex league, I said this week, and I was scared to tell people, but I said if you're in DFS and you're playing in a tournament, consider using Joe Flacco. I also said he could use Cooper. If Cooper wasn't concussed, Cooper would have been fine. He had 3 for 32. He was going to have a game, and after he went out, then Elijah Moore got the targets instead. Cooper was on his way to a game. So there's that. So, but Flacco, look, the late interception, whatever, they were trailing late. There's games Cleveland they're not going to be chasing. Flacco threw for 254, 2 touchdowns. And I said if it worked out, he'd throw for 220 and a touchdown. He outdid that. 44 pass attempts. So they're playing Jacksonville this week. Jacksonville coming off of what they just did. But if Amari Cooper being in the field is going to be, he has a concussion. I think if Amari Cooper's not on the field, I probably am not trusting Flacco, even though he got it done with Elijah Moore a bit. But Cooper just offers him so much more. So if you're in a super flex league and if Cooper's playing, if you need the quarterback spot, you can consider Flacco. Again, that's if you have injuries, right? If you have Trevor Lawrence and all of a sudden now you don't have a quarterback and you're a super flex. So just understand that. The offensive line is good. I said that play action would work for Flacco, and for the most part, it did. It was a good matchup. So there was that. But next one, obviously, you don't need me to tell you Jordan Love is on fire. But I want to point out some things. So Jordan Love started out the season, and he had that late game performances, right? He would start out slow, they'd fall behind, he would chase, and he'd put some fantasy points. And then we saw in the middle third of up to the point of the season, inaccuracy, just missing people downfield, missing intermediate routes. He's gotten better the last few weeks. Now, I know Matt LaFleur gets a lot of credit here. Matt LaFleur has really dialed up an offense, and he's learned Jordan Love's strengths and weaknesses. And he is calling route combinations and usage of all the receivers, not predictable at all, but he's put Love in a really good place. And Jordan Love has, now we don't know if it's small sample size, but he has been very accurate the last few weeks. That's been a change. So right now, he's got 3 touchdown passes in 2 straight games. He got multiple touchdowns in 4 straight games. The yardage has been fine. He's been at least 267 yards in 4 straight games. So look, right now, definitely the bottom end, with the way quarterbacks are this year, you could consider him as a bottom rung top 12 option. Obviously in Superflex, there's no question you're playing him there. But if you're in a streamer situation and your other quarterback is problematic, Love is squarely in that discussion. Eric says you needed Gardner Minshew against the Bengals or Jake Browning against the Colts. I'm going to give Browning the edge here. Minshew, I think that Zach Moss is going to be able to run well in this game. Especially Cincinnati runs if it stepped up a little bit, but they've been bad all year. They still got the same players, just not playing well. So I do think it's a Zach Moss game. And on the other hand, I think that Indianapolis, they get some pressure. Their pressure's gotten better, but I think the advantage of the 3 receivers against the Indy secondary is going to be too much. I would go with Browning there. And Charlene Tankdale is done for the rest of the schedule. They didn't give a timeline on him, and I don't even know at this point, how far they're going to go. But maybe if they make a Super Bowl run, maybe it's possible he's back for the AFC Championship. And I'm not saying they're getting there, okay, but everybody's a factor right now. The AFC's a mess. And they all got issues. So if that's the case, but in the regular season, he's done. All right. And then let's see next. Running backs. Derrick Henry's hot. And apparently he didn't have a concussion. At least that's what the coach said. Now, can we believe it? We'll find out in the week when practice goes on. But he was taken out for concussion protocol. Mike Vrabel said, not a concussion. Derrick Henry, the big dog, 76 yards and a touchdown 2 weeks ago. 102 and 2 touchdowns against the Colts. And the Colts just have been, they can't stop the run right now. But they, side note for the Colts, Grover Stewart, their great defensive tackle run stopper, he was on a 6-game suspension. That was his last game of the suspension. So the Colts may not be as bad against the run going forward. He makes that much of a difference. But anyway, for Derrick Henry, 2 very productive games, and that's coming off of a 44-yard scrimmage game, a 20-yard scrimmage game. So Henry had fallen like way down in the rankings. But remember this, here's what I want to point out. The Titans at home have been very, very good, and they have quite a few home games down the stretch. And Derrick Henry in home games obviously has been part of that thing. The run blocking is not good. Not great. It's okay, but it's not great. The pass blocking is awful. Run blocking is moderate. But Henry at home. Now, this week they're at Miami. Miami is surprisingly been a very good run defense this year. Henry's on the road. My guess is that game script is they fall behind fast. So Henry's a little bit dangerous of a play this week, because his snap share often is less than 50%. And I don't think there's any, like, early in the game, if he doesn't get it going, there might not be much. So this is a dangerous week to trust Henry. Certainly not playing him in DFS. But and then the Titans, their history of being so bad on the road, and the Dolphins being so good at home. And at that point, can the Dolphins take them lightly? Possible, but they've toyed with teams and beat them up at home. Bad teams. Isaiah Pacheco's next. Dude throwing punches on the field. That's not so smart, right? But anyway, the role's been great, right? He's getting nearly 20 touches a game. Last 3 weeks has been over 20 touches, 20 or more. And the yardage, combined yardage, he's getting you close to 90 yards or more a week. And he's finding the end zone with some regularity. So, look, runner, receiver, red zone, usage, all been great. Snap percentage, 70% the last few weeks. It's been great. So right now, Isaiah Pacheco, yeah, I mean, you don't need me to tell you this, but he's a safe floor play with a decent ceiling. Usually won't have those week winning performances. You're not going to see like 30-point games out of him, but you don't need it. You didn't draft him for that, but he's been better than anticipated. So yeah, Buffalo this week, Daquan Jones, their defensive tackle, has been out a long time. So, that run defense really took a hit. So, wheels up on Pacheco going forward. Don't need me to tell you quickly. Kyren Williams just been off the charts great. I said it going in to the Cleveland game. You play Kyren Williams in that game. Now, he ends up with like 112 scrimmage yards and a touchdown. It wasn't this earth-shattering game like he's had, but you're not complaining about it, right? And I said the Rams are running this duo concept where it's quick downhill running. They figured out that the adjustments a lot of the defense have made this year to stop the pass game, the scoring's been down across the league. Duo concepts in the run have been ones that can attack some of the fundamental strategies that most opponents are using. And Kyren Williams has fed into that very, very well. So yeah, I don't see a drop off coming for Kyren Williams right now. This is a perfect storm in his usage. Now, 2 weeks ago, it was only 61% coming back from the injury. He had 94% of the snaps this week. Those who started Royce Freeman hoping for help, not so much. Don't be surprised to see Williams over 80% snap share the rest of the way. My guess is that low snap coming back 2 weeks ago was from the injury return. Let's see here. Mostert and Achane. So what was interesting was, Achane comes back from the injury a second time. And look, there was a little bit of nervousness, right? He didn't make it through 2 touches the last time back. Is this going to happen again? I was nervous. 61% of the snaps to 38 for Mostert. Completely outplayed him. 17 to 11 carries, 4 to 1 on the targets. So it's 21 to 12 in the opportunities. So clearly Achane's healthy. And Achane, we've seen, again, another, like I said, 2 touchdown game. So if anybody has questions about this week's games, you got to put opponents down, because I am nowhere close to looking at next week's matchups. I'm still in look back mode. Usually I turn the page on Wednesday. So, if you have questions, you just got to put down, give me where they're playing, give me the opponent, give me all that stuff, because otherwise got nothing yet. We got to process the prior week before we move forward, right? All right. We know Thursday, though, we got the Patriots and the Steelers. Ooh, Ramondre's out, by the way, out multiple weeks. So, we're monitoring here. Zeke Elliott will be the lead back. Not that that means a whole lot, but volume is king in fantasy football. Don't be surprised to see him get double-digit fantasy points on a side note. So I guess we're in running backs. We can talk about him for a minute. Look, the run blocking has gotten better over the year for New England. I'll get back to Achane in a minute. But Zeke catches some passes. So, again, if you need an RB2 for volume-based, Zeke should get that. Pittsburgh, injuries at linebacker. A few weeks ago, Holcomb was out. That Montravius Adams been dealing with an injury to the nose tackle. So you can get some production on the ground. And that New England line's been decent. So Elliott should get you double-digit PPR points. Not a great game, maybe, but hey, he could find the end zone, right? So back to Achane and Mostert. So yeah, Achane right now, I have him and Mostert right around the running back one group. And the reason is, like I said, we have not had many heavy producers. I mean, it's a small number this year. And so, yeah, when you're saying running back 12, it's not a typical year where it's like, well, you got 12 monsters here. No, we don't have that. We have 5 guys that are playing really well. Austin Eckler's iffy. There's a lot of players that we're counting on. Tony Pollard, iffy. He's had touchdowns the last 3 weeks. But Achane and Mostert, in that offense with the speed they have, Achane obviously has a bigger ceiling. We just see how insane his speed is. Chuba Hubbard. So last week, I want to point this out with Hubbard. I didn't point this out yesterday. I just pointed out that he had the big game. Now, he's been productive the last 3 weeks, so we're going to give him a lot of props. The guy's playing very well. And, even though he had 14 for 45 2 weeks ago, he had a 10 for 57 before that, a 25 for $104. He scored 3 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks. Tampa was down 2 linebackers, and one of their backups went out a few plays into the game. And so Hubbard was in a good spot, and he played extremely well. Now, this week he's at New Orleans. Now, we saw at New Orleans, the Lions had both of their running backs got hot on the first drive. They were shut down after that. There was like nothing. Most of the yardage for Gibbs and Montgomery came in the first quarter when the Lions had the quick 21-0 lead. This is a bad matchup for Hubbard. Play him for volume if you have to, okay? But otherwise, not too excited about this matchup. I will pencil him in for 50 scrimmage yards, 30% chance for a touchdown. Hopefully he gets you more. But again, at New Orleans, the Saints are a different defense. And again, after they got off to that bad start against the Lions, they shut it down after that. The Lions were not able to do much at all after that. So they just got blindsided. Keaton Mitchell. Look, right now, snap share went up 24%, 36%, 46%. They're on a bye. Come back this week. My guess is, now the touches have been close to the same. The first week he only had 4, but then we saw 9, and then we saw 11 touches. My guess is he's getting you 10 to 14 touches. It seems like he's moved into that spot. Gus Edwards' snap share has gone down at the expense of Mitchell. Mitchell is a very explosive player. So there's going to be risk because the big play guys like Mitchell, once we saw Devon Achane, we start thinking everybody could have these big plays, right? So with Mitchell, though, we haven't seen the sustained brilliance that we saw from Achane. So you're still living on a big play. So that makes him a boom bust option. I still see him as a flex because the volume isn't quite to that RB2 level. But there is ceiling here. Again, bottom of the hour, we got Brandon Kravitz coming in. He'll go over a few waiver options. Got a few more minutes. Got to cover a few receivers. Obviously, Nico Collins. And Nico Collins, 2 big games in a row, 2 games over 100 yards, 2 games with a touchdown. Tank Dell out for the regular season at least. Could be longer, could be everything, could be the entire way through the playoffs. Not sure how that is with him. But look, Collins is their guy. And he has to be their guy now. And the routes in the Bobby Slowick offense, he gets schemed open. So I'm not worried that defense are going to take him away. So I do think Nico Collins will continue to see extreme target volume, and he'll have an excellent scoring floor with chances to play well. Now, he plays the Jets this week. I'm not excited about Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed against him, but I still think Collins gets you 65 yards here because he's probably going to get 14 targets. I would think that many because the Jets are easier to deal with running against. You're running them, but I don't think that that's going to be the mode that they're going to want to go with in this game. I don't think that Singletary and Pierce give them advantage. So I think they're going to have to utilize Collins in this one. Jonathan Mingo. It's been exciting. With Mingo, back-to-back 60-yard games. Looks like the coaching staff does want to get him the ball. So he has at least 6 targets in 4 straight games. I quickly want to see here if I make sure I send Brandon Kravitz the link for the show. Let me just quickly check that. I'm pretty sure I did. And let me just double check with Brandon here. So as I'm talking through this, though, yeah, I do think that we're going to see some usage out of Jonathan Mingo. I think they want to see what they have, and I think that's the way it's going to go. So I'm very excited about this, and we will see how that works out. Checking one more thing on Brandon. Give me 1 second, everybody. But yeah, Mingo is one of these guys where I think he's going to be a fine NFL player. I think when he was used in college, yeah, I sent him the link, so we're good to go. All right, we'll have this back in a second. All right, Christian Watson, kind of worried about the hamstring he grabbed at the end of that game. He's been coming on. Touchdowns in 3 straight, 20 PPR points or more in the last 2. It's close to 30 in the last game. So there's that. And he, like I said, LaFleur is figuring out the offense, figuring out his quarterback. It's been really strong. But now the injury is probably going to be a problem. But if Watson's healthy right now, yeah, I have to say with these 2 straight good games and with the offense functioning well, I think he's back in the circle of trust. And DJ Moore's coming out of the bye. Just don't forget, he's had at least 96 yards in 5 of his 6 games with Justin Fields as a starter. The one game he didn't have that reached that yard, Fields got knocked out of that game and only attempted 10 passes. And then the rematch against Minnesota, DJ Moore was just fine with 114 yards in that game. So DJ Moore playing Detroit. DJ Moore could be a league winner for you down the stretch. And let's see here. I'm sure Brandon will be coming in quickly. Keep an eye on Isaiah Likely. The first 2 games when he took over for Mark Andrews, week 1 he played, and then that against Cincinnati early in that game, he did nothing. 0 catches, I think total of 3 targets those 2 games. Well, last week, before the bye, 4 for 40 on 6 targets. They're playing the Rams this week. Not a bad matchup for tight ends. So, again, there's nervousness, those 2 games at nothing, but the 4 for 40 was something. So if you need him, you might be able to look his way. Brandon Kravitz, we are nearing the fantasy playoffs. Excited to have you here. How did your week 13 go?
All in all, pretty good, other than the fact that my most rostered player is Tank Dell. So this was a bit of a rough week in that regard. So
yeah, that's a rough one for a lot of people. I mean, man, waiver wire wonder, and people hit big on him. And yeah, hopefully those like you who have him are able to survive that as you get in the fantasy playoff season. Brandon, we're excited to talk some waivers with you as always. Who are some quarterbacks you like?
Yeah, let's take a look at a guy that we watched last night, Jake Browning. It's kind of hard not to buy into what we saw. The Jags defense has been pretty good this year, and he shredded them. He's got one of the best receiver duos in the NFL. Just threw 5 incomplete passes last night. I'm impressed with what I saw, and they get the Colts, who can't stop anybody. Speaking of the Colts, I'll also look the way of Gardner Minshew. This guy has been playing some incredible ball as of late. Yards are there, touchdowns are there. Coming off of his 3rd 300-yard performance this season, I think it might be time to take this guy seriously, Jim.
You know, it's funny, earlier in the chat, I believe that was somebody, Eric, had a question. Do I stream Browning or Minshew? You got them both listed here. I love it. I think that's fabulous. I had mentioned going into this week's game with Browning. I said the one thing that I was excited for was in the preseason, Burrow dealt with the calf, so Browning was running the first-team offense throughout the preseason. That gave him an advantage that most backup quarterbacks don't have, and then obviously he got Higgins back last night. Didn't see what he did coming. I didn't see that, but I thought at least that gave him some opportunity. But good. I love those 2 calls. So Brandon recommends that you look at Jake Browning and Gardner Minshew, 2 great options for this week. How about running back?
There's a couple of options out there for a number of leagues. I'm going to look the way of Ezekiel Elliott. Heard you talking about him before. Ramondre Stevenson out for a couple of weeks. Zeke stepped right into his role. 21 touches last week. 92 yards. You're just not going to find a lot of that volume out there on the waiver wire, so he becomes an obvious add this week. And then Roschon Johnson, if he's available, the Bears were on bye last week. Maybe some people gave up on him. I think that we're seeing a changing of the guard there. He finished the last game with a season-high 15 touches, and he looked like their best, freshest back to me. Could be an important piece for you down the stretch, so don't sleep on the name Roschon Johnson if he's still out there on the waiver wire.
Now, it's a great call on Elliott and Johnson. One point I made publicly about Johnson was I believe that his usage in that Minnesota game was extremely game plan specific. The Bears had already seen the Vikings. They saw that the blitzes were coming from everywhere with no predictability. Normally, pass pro for Justin Fields, like, well, he's going to get out of the pocket anyway. Against Minnesota, it was never going to be that way. And so you may well be on it with Johnson, but I believe that his role in that game, he played like 70% of the snaps, but it was because Khalil Herbert was never going to be able to pass protect. But if you call this one right, you might be on it. So I just want to add that in there. I was a little bit, but maybe it was a changing at a guard. And because I could certainly be wrong. I'm wrong a ton of times. So, but you're right. If you grab him and he has a similar usage, then Brandon, you 100% got it. And it could be because maybe they want to see what they got with the rookie, right?
Yeah, well, you and me both, Jim. We're wrong all the time, but hopefully we have more hits than misses, which is why you guys keep coming back, and we appreciate that. The starting running back or the primary back for the Bears has had value all season long. We just haven't really had a good idea of who that is. So if it does become Roschon Johnson, I just like him for that regard, and I love the way he runs. He's such a physical runner, and this is a team that's not really going anywhere, and we're seeing this as a changing of the guard this time of year in the NFL where teams are starting to get their young guys more involved, and we're going to touch on that here with the wide receivers as well.
So I definitely love that call. And wide receiver, who do you like this week, Brandon?
Let's look at Elijah Moore. Love the chemistry that he built with Joe Flacco quickly there. Reestablished even, if you want to look back at their history together. Moore led the Browns with 12 targets, finished with double-digit fantasy points after Amari Cooper left the game. If Amari Cooper can't go in week 14, Moore is going to have a high target share in that offense. And then this is one that you absolutely called last week. Jonathan Mingo. You said last week when we spoke, they're going to get him more involved. New coaching staff and all of that. Well, that's exactly what they did. Career highs across the board. 11 targets, 6 grabs, 69 yards. They clearly want to establish him as the number one guy. And I would just throw out there, I heard you talking about Tank Dell. Noah Brown, not a lot of action there this past week. John Mechie, same thing goes for him. But both of them are worth dart throws because of Dell's injury. Somebody's going to have to step up.
You're right, because there's a heavy amount of pass volume in that offense, and there were double-digit targets going to like everybody for a while. So yeah, don't like Brandon said, he told you Elijah Moore, he told you Jonathan Mingo, but he also recommended you could keep an eye deepest leagues on Mechie, and like you also said, Noah Brown, who's coming off a goose egg. So maybe somebody thought that hot streak is gone, and if he ends up on that waiver wire, might be time to pounce. How about tight end?
Yeah, I mean, and along those same lines, I think Brevin Jordan could be a name that you keep an eye on if they're not going to rely on those wide receivers. Even if Dalton Schultz comes back, Brevin Jordan looks like a big physical wide receiver to me when I see him out there. So he could be a guy to either keep on your roster or to go and pick up. Chig Okonkwo, though, would be the more traditional tight end target on the waiver wire. We've seen a lot of targets go his way as of late, 4 more in 5 of his last 6 games. His air yards are trending up as well. If you like the advanced stats, 64 receiving yards this past week. And more than anything else, this is a postseason play. The Titans have 2 games over the next 4 weeks against the aforementioned Houston Texans. They give up the 4th most fantasy points to the tight end position. So if you're looking for somebody to exploit some matchups in the fantasy playoffs, Okonkwo could be your guy.
And then how about defensive special teams?
Yeah, let's look the way of a team that excites nobody, but it's a nice safe floor play here. I'm going with the New England Patriots. They haven't given up more than 10 points in their last 3 games. I still see them available in like 70% of leagues, and they get Mitch Trubisky in an ugly Thursday night game. They haven't been racking up the turnovers. They only have 1 game over the last couple of weeks with multiple sacks, but you know they're not giving up points to this team. So at the very least, they won't kill you.
Oh my gosh, Brandon, teams in the NFL are 51-3 when holding opponents to 10 points or less. The 3 losses in the last 3 weeks are the Patriots.
Oh, God.
I mean, think about that. What a great stat, right? Brandon, let's just see. We might have a couple questions here from people on the show. Let me just take a quick look here and see what we got before we get us out of here. Quincy wants to know if we would start Zeke over Mixon and Pacheco. I got to pull up the schedule because, like I said, I don't look at the schedule at this point. I love
that admission, by the way. I heard you talking about that. It's Tuesday. We're just starting to scratch the surface on what next week could look like. But for me, this is a talent play more than anything else. I wouldn't be able to keep Mixon and Pacheco on the bench for Ezekiel Elliott.
Yeah, exactly. Let's just see who they're playing because, and Mixon gets Indy, and I know they get Grover Stewart back, but they have been hemorrhaging. Something else. A good one there. Brian Shen is asking us, Ken Walker, assuming he returns. Let me see who they're playing. They're playing at the 49ers. James Cook is playing the Chiefs. And Garrett Wilson has quarterback issues, to say the least, and is playing the Texans. Which one of those are you sitting? Walker, Cook, or any Walker's at the 49ers, or Wilson?
I think Wilson could be looking at a nice squeaky wheel game. I think he'll get back on track, at least in PPR. James Cook's been tearing it up as of late.
Yep.
So I think I'll avoid Ken Walker here.
Sounds like the play to me. Yeah, definitely. And the 49ers are going to unleash some havoc here. And let's see what else we got here. When do we start? Zeke over Noah Brown and Higgins. Now,
there's a lot of Zeke excitement out there. I like to see that.
Yeah, Noah Brown, who are they playing? Let me take it. They're playing at the Jets, so that's a tougher matchup. Higgins had 3 targets yesterday. They're playing Indy, which is a good matchup. Would you play Zeke over either of those?
I would play Zeke over Noah Brown until we see it. It's sort of like, in a different way. Heard you talking about Devon Achane. It stinks if you kept the guy on your bench, but what were you supposed to do? We didn't know that he was going to make it through a game. Right. It's great to see it. I always advise people, don't get too frustrated at leaving points on your bench, especially in that sort of situation, because it's better to have guys on your bench that can produce like that than to not have them. Sometimes they're not going to be in your starting lineup. I think we could look at Noah Brown the same kind of way. Good to have him right now, but let's see it happen before we thrust him back into our lineups.
Charlene's asking us about Justin Jefferson. We expect him back on the field this week. Now he is playing not with Kirk Cousins. We know it's going to be maybe Josh Dobbs. They were talking before the bye of, are they going to keep him in? It would be Nick Mullins, who was the backup before he got hurt in the season. They are playing at the Raiders. What are your thoughts on Justin Jefferson this week?
If Justin Jefferson plays, he is full go for me in fantasy every single time. Yep. He's matchup proof, quarterback proof. We hope. He's such an electric talent. You can't leave a guy like that on your bench.
And then you did already talk about Ken Walker, and kind of like me, it's like he'll get some usage here. And it looks like Charbonnet probably won't play. The knee swelling. Pete Carroll is an injury optimist, and he was buzzing about the swelling in the knee. But like you were saying, bad matchup for Walker. Maybe you get 55 scrimmage yards. Is that about right?
I think that sounds like that could be it. And Walker's got a nose for the end zone, so still wouldn't be surprised even in a tough matchup if he's able to pop one in. But I don't think we're looking at more than 10 to 12 fantasy points. And when you're talking about the option being a Justin Jefferson out there, I'm targeting more than that.
Disco Dave is asking us, and I'll give for Superflex. So Desmond Ridder is at home against Tampa, and that's usually a big deal for him. Keaton Mitchell getting about 10 touches a game against the Rams, or Roshan Johnson of the Bears, and they are playing, as I'm trying to look at my schedule here, they're playing Detroit. Lights out run defense. Would you go with Ridder here, or do you see something different?
I think you nailed it. Anytime Ridder's at home, you have to have infinitely more confidence in what he's able to bring to the table. And the Bucs defense, they've been banged up as of late. They've given up. They've had some games where they're a sieve defensively. So I'm always going to lean the way of quarterback, and it's not a bad week to start Desmond Ridder.
And then a couple more here. And Master J is asking, Parker Washington. Now, when Christian Kirk went out, he took on a mostly full-time role in the offense. He had 6 catches for 60 yards and a touchdown. Certainly nobody was looking for him. 6th-round rookie. He had been an injured reserve earlier in the season. Would you put any fab on him assuming Christian Kirk is going to miss multiple games?
I'm not sure that I saw enough. I would say 1% at the most.
1%. Because Trevor Lawrence is out multiple weeks too. Now you got C.J. Beathard. And so it's a different ballgame. That whole offense is – I was saying earlier in the show, Brandon, I think now they're going to go back to ETN as an 80% player because they're going to have to ride him with Lawrence out.
Well, they have other weapons that they can lean on too. You'll see Zay Jones like we did. Right. Calvin Ridley, they didn't get him involved at all last night.
Evan Ingram,
yeah.
Yeah, so I think Parker Washington $1. Darren Waller, Tyrod Taylor has been. I don't know if he's going to play this week. They activated him from IR. So I don't know if his return window is open. Waller also could come back anytime. Would you put any fab on Waller, assuming Tyrod Taylor's coming back as well?
I mean, Waller really wasn't that good the last time we saw him, so I'm not overly enthused by that. But yeah, I mean, if you're strapped at the tight end position, I think I might bump that up to about 5% for Darren Waller.
And then last one, I know you recommended Roschon. How much fab would you put on Roschon?
Yeah, for him, I would go closer to that 20 to 30%. I really think he could start taking over this backfield, and if that's the case, you're looking at an RB2 flex play, all the injuries that we're facing right now. So it's a hopeful spend because we haven't really seen him sustain that sort of volume yet. But if he does, he's going to be great for fantasy.
It looks like we got a couple quick questions here. We're almost done. Superflex, Disco Dave, would you start Roschon? Oh, no, we had that one already. So we're good there. And Master J kind of was talking about Roschon. Brian said thanks. Last two. Jonathan Santiago, Keaton Mitchell or Kenneth Walker?
This is where I'm glad that we can say yes to Kenneth Walker. Don't want to completely dog the guy throughout the entirety of this segment. I love Kenneth Walker as a talent. I think he's a really good running back, and he's going to get so much more volume than we see from Keaton Mitchell. I said here a couple of weeks ago, to me, I saw Keaton Mitchell as an empty the wallet kind of guy, and I'm still happy to have him on my roster, but we just haven't seen the consistency from him yet. Clearly has the talent for it, and his snap share, all the numbers that you want to see go up from almost like a backstage perspective of what he could bring to the table. That's all there. I just need to see it on a week-to-week basis. After the bye, maybe they start to get him more involved, but this is a glad to have him on my bench. Let's wait and see kind of situation. Let's go with Kenneth Walker.
And I did have a couple questions coming late. We're going to answer one more because we got to get out of here. This one is sad here, but unfortunately, Lex, it came a little late. We got to get Brandon out of here. The last one, what about Josh Palmer? He was eligible to come back from the IR. He hasn't. Are we going to get anything out of Josh Palmer?
I think he's worth a pickup. They need some help on that offense. They're not getting anything from Guyton. It was good to see Quentin Johnston show some sign of life. Still had a terrible drop this past week. They scored 6 points. They need all the help they can get. And Josh Palmer is a talented wide receiver. He's a decent deep threat for Justin Herbert. He's been sorely lacking that in this offense.
Brandon, tell everybody where they can find you and your work.
At Brandon Kravitz, you can find me across all social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Happy to chat with any of you. Also on the Fantasy Bites podcast, 5 days a week, 5 minutes or less, all the info you need in and out every single day.
Brandon Kravitz here every Tuesday. Make sure you're following him. You're following his work. Lex, you're welcome. And Charlene, have a great week as well. She'll you to have a good day as well, Brandon, because it's my weekend. For Brandon Kravitz, I'm Jim Coventry. Have a wonderful day, everyone.